Hello everyone, welcome back to Programmer. This is a show where we sit down with everyday programmers and talk about how they think, work and build. I'm your host Nazib, and today we are diving into how to survive as a manager when everything feels like it's on fire. Before we dive in, let me quickly share about Postku.my. If you are a Malaysian freelancer or running a micro business, it's a free invoicing tool that keeps all your client billing neatly in one place. For 2026, with annual revenue under 1 million ringgit, you're exempt from LHDNE invoicing, and Postku.my is built to take full advantage of that. It keeps things simple so you can focus more on your business. Joining me today is Simon Copsey, Head of Delivery at HyperOptic. Simon, thanks for being here. How's your days going?
Not bad. Grateful to be with you, Nazir. Thank you very much.
Could you share a bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. I started as a software developer, but I quickly became more interested in what was happening behind the screen rather than on the screen. So how teams organize themselves around problems and can continuously improve their approach. And that led into the deep, dark world of consulting across product delivery and transformation. Transformation for me is kind of working out how we can diagnose and uproot complex cross-functional obstacles that just get in the way of happier staff delivering better things sooner, relevant in any kind of form of role or management. And I've been very lucky recently to find a role at HyperOptic, where I get to understand and remove those complex obstacles.
From what I read, you start your career with engineering, and then when you go through a few companies, then you become more into the management. Can you talk about how did the shift into leadership happen, and what surprised you the most when you moved from engineering to management?
Yeah, sure. I'll do my best. So when I was a developer 10 years ago, I think it was, I was very lucky. For some reason, I felt I wanted to be a manager. I was then lucky to get that position and then realized I didn't know anything I needed to be a manager. I made mistakes. No one was hurt or anything, but I just wasn't effective. I was burning out. I didn't know how to help my staff. It's only through the last 10 years that I realized the kind of mistakes that I made and why. They're well-intentioned, but they happen, and it's always frustrating when you're putting a lot of effort in something and having none of the results that you're looking for. Shifting from being an engineer to a manager is just a shift that requires almost like a reformatting of your hard drive, of your approach, and it's taken me a while, a lot longer than most people probably, but grateful for what I learned and I hope it could be something that we can share. But yeah, happy to go into that in more detail. I just wanted to make sure I started at a very high level before we dived into anything together.
You mentioned that you're interested in going into management, right? Can you explain a bit or probably have a bit of a story on why management appear interesting to you when you are doing engineering? Because usually when you are doing engineering, you are looking towards more technical role along the road. For example, become a CTO or tech lead or senior software engineer or probably just team lead. So what makes management role interesting to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I probably can answer that from two perspectives. 10 years ago, Simon, and Simon today. I think 10 years ago, Simon was thinking, I'm enjoying this and I want to progress. And I don't want to progress more into architecture and things. It didn't appeal to me personally as quite as much. So the only other option was managing people, managing a team. That was the only form of progress, and I wanted to progress, so that's what I did. Not very, thought through or anything like that. For me now, I guess the manager is about getting out of the way, helping amplify the results of a team. And that I find enormously interesting because all the things that you need to do that are about understanding the environment, the conditions in which the team is working and working out how you can kind of make those conditions better. And so you have to kind of think about what are we optimizing for? Similar when you're writing code. Are we refactoring for performance, or are we refactoring for readability, for future change? Same with a team. Well, where are we trying to get to together? And what are the conditions that we need to get there that aren't true? Because if they were true, we would have got there already. So there must be something missing. And it's not what I thought it was when I started out, which was being more detail orientated. I became, micromanager. I was like, I think the only way of achieving things, of getting things done is kind of manually kind of moving each person and putting them in position, which is enormously frustrating for them. It causes burnout for the manager. It doesn't make the most of the creativity and the drive of the people. If anything, it eradicates it. So what I enjoy about management now, as best I can make out, still learning, is trying to work out where we're trying to get to, what I could do to help create the conditions for the team to succeed, get out of the way and help them get to where we want to get to together. And that's hard.
Personally, this is a different angle of seeing engineering versus management. As what I can see from my lens is that management is a bit harder than engineering. Management, I think, is a bit different because there's a lot of uncertainty when you're dealing with humans, right? There's a family events, there will be some sick. What do you think this contrast of having more certainty of your outcome and more towards uncertainty of a human, or people would say a human factor?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So I think you nailed it, right? Uncertainty is probably the key word here. I must suggest that neither one is harder nor easier. It just depends on the individual. For me, management's harder. For many other people, it's probably a lot easier. It's just my head wasn't designed for this, but I find it really interesting. So, both in themselves difficult. And I don't think as you say, it's hard to compare the two. But uncertainty exists so much in engineering. And I think that's the problem, right? We all talked about waterfall, and waterfall in itself doesn't account for uncertainty. It doesn't have those feedback loops. And I think that was a disclaimer when it was originating, when it was created, if I understood correctly. I don't know much about it. It doesn't take into account that uncertainty. That it's only when we start writing code that we can actually start to see, what are we optimizing for here? Who's the customer? And, we get into, that's the whole field of product, but it's also the field of kind of spikes and kind of agile, helping kind of recognize that there is uncertainty in what we do. We're not a factory. We haven't built this thing 100 times. If it already existed, we wouldn't be building it. And because it doesn't exist, there will always be uncertainty. So for an engineer, it's hard. They're just dealing with a different realm of uncertainty, I guess. Managers, as you said, right, they're dealing with uncertainty too, but it's more kind of like, cool, okay, how do we knit what we're doing here into the wide organization to help towards the goal of the business as a whole? And those conditions that we need to create, what are they? Why aren't they there? How do we make them? How do we create them? So I'd say both have a great deal of uncertainty. Both are hard for different reasons.
The way you mentioned about it, I think it's fair for both, for management and also engineering. Both have its own kind of uncertainty. It's just depending on the people or managing it, whether or not you are more interested into engineering or probably a management type of role. All right, let's go into the geek section. So there's a few questions that probably engineers love to ask other engineers, right? So the first question will be, what is your daily driver right now? Is it Mac OS, is it Windows, or is it Linux?
Unfortunately, it's probably pragmatic. So I used to use Linux. I used to love Linux. I used to love being able to kind of configure the system like Gentoo and Debian. But I got to that point where I just wanted it to work. I just wanted my camera to work. I wanted to be able to play games, which you could do very easily now on Linux. But back then, I couldn't. So then I moved to Mac OS, I'm afraid. And just grateful things just work for a lazy person like me.
Understandable. All right. The next question will be, if you are still doing engineering works, right? Or probably previously when you in an engineering role, what code editor do you use? Text editor? Are you experimenting with any of those AI or agentic code editors yet?
So I'm afraid I'm not doing the experimentation around AI. When it comes to code, I think I was coding mainly in Java and then a bit of Python and a bit of proprietary language. But I did like PyCharm, and can't remember the Java equivalent of PyCharm from So I did like those IDEs.
So the next question will be, if you are building something from scratch right now, right? What tech stack or language do you naturally reach for?
I guess it depends on the job, right? But generally, if I'm just hacking, which I haven't done for some time, it depends. I think the last language I probably used, actually, strangely enough, was Lua, because I was fortunate to teach games programming, and Lua's up there, and I didn't know Lua, and it was my last lecture, and I wanted to give something that the students can play with after I'd finished, and so there was a fancy console, Pico 8, that used primarily Lua. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, Lua. I don't know. And so overnight, I worked out the A-star algorithm and programmed it in Lua and the fancy console and managed to get it working so we could kind of just play with it on the last day together.
All right, the last question will be, what do you do outside of work as a hobby?
Oh God, I'm really boring. So I guess jogging and listening to audiobooks, that's my very happy place. Just going for a run in the woods with an audiobook. Sci-fi trash, or strangely, as you get older, I don't know about you, Nazib. I mean, you're way younger than me, but I've got into all the things I never thought I'd get into, like cheese and onion crisps and Brussels sprouts, but also reading the first few books into philosophy, because I realized philosophy is all about curiosity and questioning the world around you. And that's what consulting is, and that's what management is. It's about questioning reality, questioning things around you, and finding win-win solutions as a result of finding something that people believe is true but isn't true. And so that kind of got me into philosophy. But I'm literally like 2 books. So I've never read any philosophy. I'm a really slow reader. I have so much to learn, but that's my current area of interest because I've already just discovered it. My late life. How about you, Nazir?
During my downtime or outside of the work, I usually do programming. When you are becoming a dad, you start playing with your daughters, your son. Like, you never play badminton on the evening, then suddenly you can just start playing badminton in front of your house, and then you start playing chess with them, checkers.
Yeah, my kids are 1.5 and I have so much to learn around that, but I'm looking forward to, we're doing more and more together, of course, but yeah, looking forward to like those activities you mentioned. Good suggestions, thank you.
let us get into the main topic, how to survive as a manager when everything feels like it is on fire. I like this topic because I use This Is Fine meme from webcomic Gun Show. Have you know about that? So where the dog sitting in the fire while drinking coffee as my profile picture for the longest time until today for non-professional accounts. So for example, like social media. Can you go through a bit about this topic on how to survive as a manager when everything feels like it's on fire?
Yeah, I'll do my best. And as I said, I have so much to learn. So I'm sure anything I say now is open to much improvement by others. When everything seems on fire, the question is, what do we not do? And that way we can focus on the fires that matter most. And I guess there's two ways that I like to limit the fires as best I can in my head. And I particularly draw on a theory of constraints, which is, among other things, a management that's very helpful to me, originated by Ellie Goldratt. Draws on ideas from Deming, Acol. Anything I say that sounds good comes from other people like them. Anything that doesn't sound good is mine. But the two ways of limiting where to look is, firstly, understanding what are we optimizing for, as we discussed earlier. And ideally, it should be one thing. As I said, if you're trying to optimize your code for both readability and performance, you'll just flip-flop and make very little gains. Whereas if you pick one, you can really go to town. So understanding what your goal is, working backwards from the organizational goal, how you fit into the organization, not only gives you a clear sense of purpose and how your team or individual contributions help the organization forward, but also help you filter. Because then you can start to prioritize. If you know what you're optimizing for, you can say, okay, well, all these things that we could do, only that one matters. Or these two things matter, but this one will create more impact against that thing. So let's do that one first. If you don't have a goal, you can't prioritize. It's like having 20 to-do lists. You always have 20 things to do at once. The second thing is then recognizing, particularly as a manager where a lot of your focus on creating the conditions for your staff, is working out, once you know what your goal is, what are the things that are most getting in the way of your team making progress against that goal? You could call it obstacles if you like. But once you know those obstacles that are relevant because they're getting in the way of your team achieving the goal, you need to work backwards because those obstacles tend to be effective. Teams don't just feel demotivated. People don't just leave the organization for no reason. Delivery just doesn't slow down. Technical debt doesn't just appear out of nowhere. All these things are effects, like a bad smell. They don't just happen on their own. They come from somewhere. So the next thing to do is working out where those obstacles are coming from. And as you kind of work backwards from what those obstacles are, they tend to converge on just one or a few things at any one time, leading to all these effects. Similar to when you go to the doctor and you realize you have all these symptoms. They tend to come from one thing at a time. If you work out what that is and you focus there, firstly, you create widespread relief with much less effort, but also you actually do get relief long term. If you focus on the symptoms, the obstacles directly, you might have some temporary gains, but you're wasting effort and the things will come back because they're going to be caused by this other thing down here that you haven't tackled. In summary, what are you optimizing for? What's your goal? Secondly, all the things that are getting in the way of that, where are they coming from? Focus there. Don't focus on the things themselves, because often you'll be wasting a lot of effort, fighting a lot of fires that are caused by something elsewhere.
When you mentioned about the sense of purpose, right, I think that is what being important here, because sometimes when you try to fix something and it doesn't work and then you become panicked. But usually when you have that very good sense of purpose, you basically re-evaluate your decision and check back what works and what doesn't work. Does it agree with your statement just now, or is it something very different from what I'm assuming?
Yeah, no, but there's very, very similar. So for me, sense of purpose is kind of coming from intrinsic motivation. One of the things, people we need as a team to want to come to work each day is feeling the sense of purpose that we're contributing something greater than ourselves. As Daniel Pink and Alfie Cohen, all these people remind us, we're born motivated. Often that can die if we don't have, purpose, mastery, autonomy around us. It's why people like yourself can contribute to open source projects, because we feel a sense of purpose. We want to do this. So that's what I mean by purpose. But what you're saying is also very true, right? In that if we don't know the outcome that we're trying to create as engineers, then we can't pivot. If we don't know why we're doing what we're doing, we can't improve what we're doing. Similar to why we write BDD or TDD first, because then we go, okay. And often when you do that, it's great to have the test, but the main reason is it's made you think from, starting with the end in mind. So you can then say, okay, well, that's what I'm trying to achieve, and what do I need to do? Whereas if you do it the other way around, I don't know about you, but I write terrible code, and then I get to writing my unit test, and I'm like, what? Why did I write that? That doesn't even work. So I think, starting with the end in mind when it comes to TDD, BDD, any effort allows us to work out what we need to do to achieve it. And if we don't get the result, how we can improve is the why. Whereas if we don't know what that is, we can never improve because we don't know why we're doing what we're doing. So I agree with you. For me, there's slightly different things, but both very important. Your point is very well made.
Is there any story that the audience can learn from this topic? Like, is there any a situation where you consider it is a good manager or it is a bad manager when everything is on fire? Because when we work on environment, right, for bad manager is that they start to blame everyone, everything, right? In your experience, do you have any advice of being good manager or don't be a bad manager when everything feels like on fire? Because if everything is okay, good, I don't think that would be a much challenge in the management role. What do you think?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I do, just because I think you were kind of saying, you were nudging this with your word assumption, like good and bad are relative terms, similar to good code or bad code, right? Depends on what you're optimizing for. Like good code you might see as with loads of comments, and someone else might see that as bad, right? So good and bad, everyone's good all the time, and for me, but it's just maybe what's most effective then to taking them and their team towards their goal. Just want to frame it that way, because I definitely see myself as a bad manager, but I realized it was just maybe ineffective from what I wanted to be, my values, and also where the team needed to be back then. Just didn't want anyone to feel like, oh my God, I'm bad. I think one of the key things is, I think you nailed it, right? Which is a friend of mine, Mark, he has this really nice phrase that I've repeated so many times because I found it so helpful. And my father as well has used this phrase, kind of similar, which is soft on people, but hard on systems. So often we see those situations where we do postmortems and we kind of keep asking why, and we get to, John did this, and then we it's John. But that's just the beginning. If you keep saying, well, what did we do to create the conditions where John needed to do this? And in the Phoenix project, they have the examples of overworking staff, so they just can't think. And we push them too hard. But there's also the things where, maybe you don't have the right policies in place. It all comes from the belief that people are good. And if you believe people are good, then the question always becomes back to what did we do as managers as we try to create the policies or the rules of how work is done that allowed this to happen. It's us, it's not them. These people tried to do the best they could. If we believe people are bad, as Goldratt would suggest, we just bitch and moan. We'll just say, that's a bad person, get rid of them. But we'll never be able to make the situation better because our questioning stops. Whereas if we keep asking, okay, so what created that? What were the conditions in the organization that allowed that to happen? Then we can find real improvement. Hard on systems, hard on the conditions, but soft on the people. But people are good, you hide them. And I think even Toyota, as my mentor mentioned, Noah Cantor, I think they ask whenever something unexpected happens, they ask 40 questions. And it's only the 40th one that says, did we put this person in the wrong role? The 39 questions before that are, what did we do to cause this problem? And even the last one is still, did we put the wrong person, did we put the right person in the wrong role? Is it still us? They recognize that, 96% of the time, what gets in the way, as Deming would say, is the system of work and not the person. But that's, fundamental attribution bias. That's really hard. That's really, really hard. I got that completely wrong. When something didn't happen as a manager, as expected for me, I would go with that guy. Jeez, come on. Whereas it was me. One of the times it was the priorities weren't clear in the team, and that it was my job to set priorities to help priorities emerge. And so he ran off to do something. I was like, why are you running off there? It was me. He helped me see that it wasn't clear to him where he should be at any one time. That's my fault. It's not him. So yeah, long-winded way of saying I think the manager I aspire to be, and that would be, I think, effective in a number of situations, is recognizing people are good. And if we recognize people are good, we then start to question how we got in the way of them, how we created rules or policies that made their life hard, so we can start to reverse those or improve them and make their life easier, because everyone wants to do a good job. You made me think then, as it did that make sense? What comes up for you?
It is something for the audience to know also that people are not perfect, right? And then there's a few mistakes here and there, whether or not you are a software engineer or a manager. Try to be understanding. And this is what I can take from what you are telling me, because there is some decision that probably is not that person's fault, but you also need to understand how they make the judgment or what is the way forward, what the question is. So even though they still have a bad manager, good manager, I think that is something to guide people what is more acceptable way of being a manager. The key point here is to be more understandable for both engineers and also for management.
I think so. And to be more blunt, often when as managers and as parents, we see something not happening as expected, it's our fault as managers and parents. If we leave if my kid breaks a vase and he's 1.5 years old, whose fault is that? Not his fault. I put it somewhere where he can reach it. He can't make a decision. He didn't try to break it. He's not probably encountered a porcelain before. It's my fault. If he's making decisions that seem bad, and then I try and tell him what to do, I'm actually making it harder for him, because you get better at making decisions by making decisions. So I need to create conditions where he can make conditions safely by kind of offering him choices initially, maybe. So if you see something you don't like as a manager, it's probably, if you trace it all the way back, it's probably due to something you've done. And that's hard. That's a hard truth, but it's also bittersweet in that if it's because of you, you also have the power to make it better, which is just great, but it's scary.
Before we wrap up, may I know how do people find you online? Anything you want to plug or mention? I believe you have a club called the Curious Coffee Club.
I appreciate you asking, Nazib. So I have, you're quite right. So I have a website where I write articles, share videos, share content on how we can help organizations get out of their own way. And that's curiouscoffee.club, as you said, not .com, but .club. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. I love to learn from others. So always happy when people reach out and say hi.
That's all for our session today. Thank you very much, Simon, for the conversation. For the audience, if you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show and share it with someone who will get value from it. Catch you in the next time. Bye-bye.